right, moving on with factoring in Algebra 1, we're going to talk about squares of binomials. These are perfect squares that end up to be trinomials, and for some reason, a lot of you guys forget this. Remember that a plus b squared is telling us to take a plus b times a plus b. You have to FOIL here. So you end up with a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. If I have a minus b quantity squared, again, you're FOILing a minus b times a minus b. You end up with a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. So the first part that we're going to look at is we're just writing these as a trinomial. So they're asking us to write it as a trinomial. So remember, this is saying t minus 4 quantity squared. I literally just write t minus 4 right next to it and ignore that little squared because I like to visually see that I have to FOIL. T times t is t squared. And remember, we did this mentally. The outers is negative 4t. The inners is negative 4t, so that's negative 8t. And the last terms is plus 16. Moving on. 6b plus 2 quantity squared. Again, I'm just going to write 6b plus 2. Ignore the square. 6b times 6b is 36b squared. The outers are 12b and the inners are 12b. That's why they say take 2 of it, 2 times that. Well, 12 plus 12 is 24b. And my last terms are 2 times 2, which is 4. So hopefully by now you're feeling pretty good. Last one, what we're going to look at like this is 3z minus 2w squared. Let's see if we could do this without rewriting it. So remember, the formula tells us to take the first term and square it. Well, that's going to be 9z squared. And then they tell us to take 3z and negative 2w and multiply it and double it. So that's negative 6wz. Well, if I double that, I get negative 12wz. And then we're just going to take the last term and square it, which is positive 4w squared. So this is what you guys are already familiar with. These are all FOILing, and you guys are super great with FOILing, and you know how to FOIL in your head. But now we're going to move on to the opposite, which is called factoring. So the next directions say, decide whether each trinomial is a perfect square. If so, factor it. Well, let's look at this one. The perfect square of 9m squared is 3m, right? Yeah. The perfect square of 4 is 2. And remember, it said if I multiply these and double it. So if I multiply 3m and 2, I get 6m. If I double it, I do get 12m. And this negative right here tells me to put a negative right there. So this one is factorable. The answer is 3m minus 2 quantity squared. Let's keep going. 25y squared. Well, the perfect square is 5y. 1 squared is 1. When I multiply these two, 5y times 1 is 5y, and double it, do I get 5y? No, I get 10y. We're going to call the ones that don't work, we're going to call them primes. So get used to the word prime. All right, let's check this one. 16a squared. Well, that's a perfect square, 4a. 9b squared. That's a perfect square, 3b. If I multiply these two, I get 12ab, and if I double it, I do get 24ab. So this is going to be 4a. Because of that sign right there, it's going to be plus 3b quantity squared. Great job working on this factoring. So remember, these are factoring perfect squares. So let's do a quick review of the factoring that we have learned. I always like to review what we've learned. We've always started with learning how to factor the GCF. You guys were doing awesome with GCF, but remember I told you always forget to do this one first. So this is if I had 3x squared y plus 9xy squared. And remember that this one we could take out a 3, because I know the GCF. We can take out a 3, and we could take out 1x and 1y. So when I take those out, I have to write what we have left over. Well, what I have left over when I take a 3xy out of 3x squared y is just an x. And when I take a 3xy out of 9xy squared, I just have a 3y. So our first kind of factoring is called GCF factoring. The second type of factoring we worked with were two terms. And this is the difference of squares. And you will memorize these like the back of your hand very soon. So remember, this is something like x squared minus 9. I know that anytime I have two perfect squares, x squared, the perfect square is, I'll write it underneath, x. 9, the perfect square is 3. And notice it is a difference. So I know I have a plus and a minus. Why do I have a plus and a minus? Because those inner and outer terms are going to cancel out. So we have x plus 3, x minus 3, and that is going to be the answer of difference of perfect squares. And the kind that we just did today is, they're actually trinomials. I actually could have called the other one binomials, because you know what a binomial is. And we're going to start with perfect squares. And that's the kind we did today. So if you need to review, just look back on the video and review perfect squares. And we're going to continue to build on this. Great job today.